Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Mimic. Calvin Rankin came into comics in X-Men 19. He was the son of a scientist, and when he was just a child, he knocked over a beaker filled with this experimental chemicals, okay? Now this red gas emerged and he inhaled it, so now he has this amazing ability where he can mimic anybody else's powers. They just have to be standing close by. Now the team at first is trying to take him down, but they're failing, of course, as he's just adapting to their every move. So while this ability does sound like one of the best, it kind of just depends on who's near you. I mean, he's not too powerful, but he is, if you're the one that's powerful that's near him. See what I mean? So if you're hanging out with Mimic, he may just seem pretty normal. That's because, well, shocker, you're just pretty normal. You can't fly, you can't shoot lasers out of your eyes. But if Cyclops came along, all of a sudden, this guy is totally different. You're still a boring human. Now he's another Cyclops. How unfair is that? Number 9, not another Teen Mutant. Okay, this next one is a one-off, okay? He doesn't have a name exactly, so we'll just refer to him as Teen Mutant from now on. Not a Teen Mutant Ninja Turtle, just a Teen Mutant. Well, you'll see, it's kind of crazy. At first, he looks like a regular kid. He's got posters on his wall, one of which is Wolverine with the caption, "Be different," right below it, but we'll talk about that a little later, because he may have taken that a little too literally. So he wakes up, he's ready for school, he's looking for breakfast. His mom is nowhere to be seen, only a pile of her clothes remain on the ground. So he doesn't call the police, but rather he just writes a note, sticks it, and then goes to school. If you ever wake up and there's just clothes left, call the police no matter what. That comes first. On the way to school, he sees there's just a collar lying on the sidewalk. Just a collar, no animal. Okay, odd. What's going on? Finally, he sees people. He's like, okay, great. I'm not going crazy. Whew, that was a close one. But I bet that he wished that that was the case after what's about to happen. So he has this neat ability where people just don't survive being close to him. They kind of explode. It's pretty gross. And he hears it from the guy in that poster himself. He hears it from Wolverine when he finds him ducking out in a cave. So what happened was when he hit puberty, he developed a specific mutation that radiates a series of toxins and acid-like poisons. So it wipes out any organic tissue in its way. It turns it into vapor. So the number of people that he ended up taking out that day was a whopping 265. And you thought he was just another blonde-haired teen heartthrob. Think again. Number 8, Avenger X. Cressida made her debut in Avengers Volume 7, Issue 2. When the Avengers got help from the X-Men to track down the Stranger, Professor X helped by using Cerebro to direct them to northern Thailand, where they rescued a local woman named Cressida from the cosmic being. Now, she had this ability that could amplify the Avengers. They all got super jacked up, and even Cap said that he felt stronger. He felt like he could take on a full army. He's jumping higher, throwing 10 times harder. It's wild. When Scarlet Witch asked how she did that, she said she doesn't really know, but she feels sorry doing it. But the downside of her powers were kept hush-hush from Wanda. See, in order to empower them, she had to drain the life of everybody else in the village. And in the next issue, she was deemed an Avenger. She was given the tour, the whole thing. Welcome aboard. But meanwhile, while this is going on, at Sunshine Nursing Home, the same thing was happening to those who got the life drained from the village. Powerful team member, but maybe a little bit too dark. Number 7, Squirrel Girl. On to something a little bit more bright, let's go on to Doreen Green. She made her comic book debut in Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, Issue 8, back in the early 90s. She was born with these fantastic squirrel-like abilities, tail included. She learned she could communicate with squirrels at just age 10. Now this sounds like a fairy tale so far, but don't let the tail fool you. She packs an incredible punch. For example, in an early comic, she took on Dr. Doom. In Marvel Superheroes Issue 8, she bumps into Stark, gives him a run for his money in order to prove how powerful she is, and then she shows Tony her power. She jumps, she hops, she climbs all around. It's pretty impressive. Squirrels start coming in from everywhere, and then all of a sudden they're commanded to jump onto Tony. And then Dr. Doom came and interrupted the whole thing. He jammed Stark's electronics, and in order to save Tony, she sent that horde of squirrels onto the Doom ship. It was amazing. And then voila, Stark is free thanks to the insane squirrel posse. Then the squirrels get down to Doom, and then he leaves. He taps out. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this. This is way too much for me. Guy straight up ran away. Doreen later joined the US Avengers on their 2017 run. Number 6, Sandman. Believe it or not, Sandman was once an Avenger. William Baker made his comic book debut in 1963 with the Amazing Spider-Man issue 4. And yeah, sure, most of the time the Sandman is considered a villain, but that's why we have to mention this small change of heart, because even bad guys, it's possible to change. It happens. He bumped into the Thing, a similar looking guy, you know, being big and beige and big and all. So they had a little chat about life and how to use your abilities maybe for the greater good. So we started to help Spider-Man a bit here and there, and then in Avengers issue 329, Captain America announced a new Avengers team, and on that roster was Sandman. He was one of the 7 reserve members. He of course didn't last long because, well, he was a reserve member for one, and coming from the villain side already, I'm sure he wasn't too committed. How great would that have been if the good guys had a sand dude? Wouldn't that be great? We could use the sand guy. Number 5, Triathlon / 3D Man. Okay, 3D Man / Triathlon, aka Delroy Garrett Jr. He joined the team in Avengers Volume 3, Issue 27. He showed up and just whooped everybody's ass. It was great. The team basically had to hire him on the spot. They had no choice. But before this, he grew up running, hence his name Triathlon. He competed in the Olympic Games and he was crushing it. That was until he tested positive for steroids. And then he got his 3 medals taken away from him. So he turned to religion, to the triune understanding, and the group's founder, Jonathan Tremont, had found a fragment of a mysterious object and used it to give Garrett the powers of 3D Man, the 3D Man himself. Look out. I would see a 3D Man movie in 3D. God, what a ride that would be. You just don't put on the glasses and you don't see half the movie. You're like, oh, I get it. It's cool. Number 4, US Agent. Okay, spoilers coming in hot for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If you haven't watched it yet, pause this video, watch the entire series, and then come back and click play. It's easy. John Walker is known for being the hothead that replaces Captain America in the show and in the comics. He went as far as injecting super soldier serum into his own body, but he didn't become Steve Rogers. Instead, he killed a guy with the Captain America shield. It's kind of brutal. And by the time the show ends, the shield is back in the hands of Captain America, Sam Wilson, and Walker becomes US Agent, officially. The suit's black, so it's, official and all. And in the comics, he eventually joined the ranks of the West Coast Avengers, and it feels like this is where the Avengers are going in the MCU currently. Because in the comics, when Hawkeye moved to the West Coast and set up an Avengers team there, the government wanted to put somebody official, kind of out of the superhero loop, in there just to make sure things are going smoothly. Now at this time, the Vision was also a bit of a problem, so that move made sense. So they sent in US Agent. Now with Vision being white in the MCU, I feel like they're kind of heading there. This is getting good. Getting tricky. Number 3, Hawkeye. I have to mention Hawkeye because he's one of the 1960s Avenger recruits, and he's one of the big 6 in the MCU, and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit on screen still. Like in the comics, he becomes Goliath. It's epic. When the West Coast Avengers were assembled, Hawkeye was the leader of the team, like I said. But for a little bit, that was until they thought the US Agent would be a better replacement for leadership. So he ended up coming in and then taking over as the new leader. So things get a little wonky. So Hawkeye thought, no sweat. I'll get some Pym particles and we'll see who the biggest guy is after all. And then he became this. Number 2, the Sentry. He made his first appearance in Sentry issue 1. Meet Robert Reynolds. He was a struggling addict who made his way into a laboratory and discovered something called the Golden Sentry Serum. So he consumed it, and then he got the surprise of a lifetime when he was given the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. So back in 1947, Project Sentry was put together by the remnants of the US Operation Rebirth and Canada's Department K. They joined forces and they wanted to recreate the super soldier serum, but they magnified its effects 100,000 times. That plus a cool outfit in the mix, and now we have a new superhero. So after this, Robert fought alongside the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and of course, the New Avengers. He's a really powerful guy. He once became the Horseman of Apocalypse. He was the Horseman Death. And then he ended up going crazy because he thought he was the heir of Apocalypse. It was a whole thing. It was crazy. And finally, number 1, Hercules. Of course, we can't forget the son of Zeus. Come on, the king of the Olympian gods, another 60s recruit, Hercules. He made his first Silver Age appearance in Journey into Mystery Annual Issue 1 in 1965, and in Avengers Issue 45, he and the rest of the team went against the Super Adaptoid. And right after the dust had settled, Hercules was standing with the team, expressing how bright the sun doth shines. Somebody even put his name on a sign. That's how you know it's official. As soon as a 19-year-old starts painting your name on it like a Katy Perry concert, bam, you made it. So with Russell Crowe reportedly cast as Zeus in the next Thor installment, we may be closer to Hercules than we think.
Coming in at number 10, we have the infamous Drax the Destroyer, best known as being the muscle of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And while, yes, obviously someone with the title of the Destroyer is going to be powerful, Drax's full capabilities are actually even more impressive than you might think. Even known as the Killer of Thanos in some interpretations of the character, Drax is not only incredibly physically strong and resilient, but is capable of creating a shield known as an aura around his body in times of great need, essentially making him invincible and greatly enhancing his already superpowered strength. Needless to say, when it comes to destroying, Drax is even better than you would expect. Coming in at number 9, we have Miles Morales, aka the current young Spider-Man. Having inherited all of the same powers as Peter Parker after being bitten by a radioactive spider, Miles Morales has had lots of opportunities to show off his enhanced speed and strength alongside receiving some spider powers that are solely his own, such as being able to camouflage himself with his surroundings and his iconic Venom Blasts, in which he uses his body's natural bioelectricity to completely stun an opponent. This means that despite his young age, Miles is still an incredibly powerful hero who might have to worry more about holding himself back rather than not being strong enough. No matter what power he's using though, Miles has proven he's more than worthy of picking up the mantle of Spider-Man.
Number 8, El Guapo. This next one, I don't think I would even notice this mutant if he was standing right in front of my very eyes. Meet Robbie Rodriguez. He was the stuntman for X-Statix the movie. Now he saved the team from Sharon Ginsburg. She attacked because she blamed X-Statix for the amputation of her wings. So in comes Robbie Rodriguez with his sentient skateboard to save the day. That's right, sentient skateboard, you heard me. He has no real powers himself, but he has this symbiotic skateboard that acts along with his mental commands, even subconscious thoughts sometimes. So the skateboard once beat him up for cheating on his girlfriend. So next time you see a dude at the skate park, just double check and see if it's Robbie Rodriguez, because you never know. Number 7, Anarchist. Tyke Alucard made his first appearance in X-Force issue 116. The same issue that had Zeitgeist origins as well, actually, which is in part 2. If you haven't already seen it, I talk about him. He's the guy who pukes acid. Gross. But we also meet Tyke Alucard in this. So he said he doesn't want to go and give away all his secrets, but he's got something going on with his sweat. It's like acid. He can secrete acid from the pores of his body, and if there's enough of it, say that when he's fighting bad guys, it becomes this form of energy that he's able to blast out. He would blast these acid blasts. Like, how insane is that? The guy makes acid brass knuckles. Brassed knuckles. He was a new addition to the team to replace Sluck, but they weren't a fan of him at first. They thought he was a risk, not a team player, high maintenance, and mentally unstable. Although he pulled through for the team at the end of the day. Number 6, Cipher. Douglas Ramsey came around with comics with New Mutants issue 13. Now he believes that language is power. And when we first meet him, he's a smart dude in a vest. He's got nice hair, he's talking about deciphering codes. We wouldn't expect too much from him. Maybe he's their guy in the chair. Other chair. Now Douglas is actually quite powerful. His ability allows him to communicate with any species. Written or spoken language doesn't make a difference. Doug's got your back, whatever language that is. He can also extend this ability to decipher codes and complex equations, leaving him a pretty powerful asset to any team. Number 5, Iboy. Trevor Hawkins, again, one of those mutants where you can probably guess his mutation just on his name alone. Iboy is, yes, covered in eyes. 57 of them, to be exact. He made his first appearance in Wolverine and the X-Men issue 19. He was one of the new mutants that manifested their power after the Avengers vs. X-Men war. Then he enrolled in the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. So Iboy, okay, big deal. You walk up, you poke all of his eyes out, problem solved. We've played Zelda before, we know how to defeat this guy. Wrong. He is more than meets the eyes. Trevor can of course see you coming, and though his eyes can't shoot laser beams, they do have a plethora of unique abilities. I'm talking microscopic vision, telescopic vision, X-ray vision, night vision, infrared, thermal, chemical detection, you name it, he can see it. All these eyes will see you in any sense. He can even pick up on your body language quite well. Number 4, Nature Girl. Lynn Lee made her debut in Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 2, Issue 1. And at first she seems like a regular student, just maybe with antlers. Okay. So Nature Girl can control and bond with animals, which sounds pretty peaceful if anything. Like if I could control animals, I'd spend all my time in the woods. I'd just take a flute and I'd have a great time. Maybe even pack a lunch, it'd be lovely. With her powers, she can of course do that, but also go further. She can connect to the natural world and control all of nature. Living beings, plants, weather, the very geology of the earth. Whatever the case is, she can control it. She can talk to plant lives as well. So if there's any plants that need some watering in your apartment, she'll let you know. And if Nature Girl needs to make a quick escape and there were no birds around to control, she herself can fly only for a limited time. Number 3, Gold Balls. Fabio Medina made his comic book debut in X-Men Volume 3, but it wasn't until issue 11 that we got to meet Gold Balls. His powers came to be after somebody tried to rob him, then all of a sudden he started to generate these spheres, these gold balls, out of every part of his body. And whenever these bouncy gold balls hit something, they would make a boink sound, which ought to be pretty annoying just as it is. So these gold balls were not made of gold, rather they were produced from infertile eggs. He's pretty outstanding as it is, but currently in the comics he's referred to as Egg, which is more appropriate after he learned the true nature of his abilities. So Egg and these other members of the Five are tasked with resurrecting any mutants that have met their terrible fate. So eggs are a major key to this process. So he's not just all about, being gold and having balls and stuff. Number 2, Tag. Brian Cruz made his first appearance in New Mutants Volume 2, Issue 10. He was actually reborn thanks to that group of 5 that I just mentioned with gold balls. So Brian's powers are pretty amazing. I can see how one wouldn't expect him to be as powerful as he is. So he has what's called the pariah effect. So if he tags you, hence his name Tag, when he tags you, you become it. Then he uses this form of telepathy to make you emit this signal that causes everybody else to run away from you, just to leave your vicinity. Or they can run towards you, which is even scarier. And he can decide on that number of people affected as well. It could be one person chasing you, or it could be 200, depends how many are near you. This effect stops after the victim reaches 100 feet, but still, that many people in that radius all running towards you, like what if it was Black Friday? It would be an absolute nightmare. Also, these people that are chasing you are fully aware of what's happening, they just can't control it, so if that's not a nightmare, I don't know what is. And finally, number 1, we have Summoner. Making his first appearance in X-Men Volume 5, Issue 2, the Summoner. The Summoner at first just looks like a mutant child. It's referring to its mother, so off the bat you assume, okay, young. He's the son of Bracken and Apocalypse's first horseman of war. He was born 300 years ago on Arakko, the highest ranking out of all the other summoners. They were these wizards that can summon creatures of Arakko. Now his grandmother was taken out by the dark god of Amenth, Annihilation. So that's when the Amenthi daemons destroyed Arakko's towers and then attacked and wiped out all those mutants. Now the Summoner is not just a pale child, he can summon a horde of elementals as well. Number 10, Mantis. A new addition to the Guardians team, Mantis went from being Ego's roommate in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to becoming an Avenger, even holding Thanos down while the rest of the team tried to take the gauntlet off. Now in the comics, Mantis had to endure quite a bit before becoming an Avenger. She made her first appearance in Avengers issue 112, The Lion God Lives. Mantis was trained as a child by alien priests, section of the Kree, who thought that she was destined to be the celestial Madonna. She was killing it in martial arts, hence the nickname Mantis. Now her real name is Brant, but Mantis sounds much more fun. No offense to all the Brants out there. Those priests enhanced her mind, giving her telepathic abilities, and on her 18th birthday, she was given the gift of a lifetime, when her mind was wiped and she was instead given false memories of her childhood as an orphan in Vietnam, to experience a normal life. Because that's part of the celestial Madonna route. Nothing builds that Madonna power more than some time in Vietnam, right? And in doing so, Mantis learned to hold it down on her own quite easily. Number 9, Dr. Druid. Anthony Ludgate entered Marvel Comics in Weird Wonder Tales issue 19. He's a bit of a smarty pants, some would say. I mean, he got a degree in psychology from Harvard and then became a psychiatrist. But that wasn't enough for Anthony. He wanted to study the ancient powers of his ancestral druids. So he was studying the occult on his off time. He finally met the Ancient One who passed down a lot of tricks, and Anthony left and became Dr. Druid, assisting monster hunters, including Makari when they went against deviants. So this guy goes back quite far. He's also a little more dramatic than strange, some would say. In Avengers issue 294, he manipulated Captain America's mind so that he would be the replacement chairman. And this was right after Captain Marvel was injured. What a snake.
And in 8 Acrita, Andrea's father was Bernardo Rojas, once a renowned leader in Central America who researched pre-Hispanic cultures at a university in Mexico. She lived along with her cat named Zapata, named after one of the revolutionary leaders in Mexico. Acrita specialized in striking against organized crime. Every time she caught a perpetrator or helped avert a tragedy, she cited a literary quotation, or if she had the time, painted graffiti insulting or challenging the local authorities, which might hint at her being a bit of an anarchist, which honestly I'm kinda into. This character seemed to be kind of a Mexican Batman, and despite her anarchist tendencies, she often worked with another 2 Mexican superheroes, Iman and El Muerto. Together with these 2 allies and Superman, she once saved Mexico and the world from the total destruction from a bad guy group trying to channel the powers inherent to the ley lines of Earth to accomplish their goals. So good on ya, Andrea. Good on you. And it's 7, Jackolantern. The first Jackolantern is Daniel Cormac of Ireland, who was born to a poor farmer who was granted a magical lantern by an Irish fairy. Yep, that's how we're going with this. Cormac is a member of the Global Guardians, an international group of superheroes. His first recorded mission in Super Friends number 8 was to help Green Lantern dismantle a bomb in Ireland. Both Daniel Cormac and Marvin Noronza, the second Jackolantern, have a mystical lantern that gives them the power of flight, flame projection, teleportation, illusion casting, enhanced strength, and the ability to just create create fogs. The power of the lantern is also its weakest at noon and gradually increases until its peak at midnight. Liam McHugh, the third Jackolantern, found a way to internalize the powers of the mystical lantern and no longer needs to carry it. So yeah. And it's 6, Apollo. Essentially, the Wildstorm universe's answer to Superman, Apollo is now technically a part of the DC superhero universe, like Wildstorm ever since the two universes converged following the events of Flashpoint. Apollo possesses many of the same powers as Superman, but with a few notable differences. Like Kal-El, Apollo possesses superhuman strength, flight, and near invulnerability. If you want some clarification as to just how impervious to damage he is, he's able to walk on the surface of the sun. Apollo also has the ability to shoot lasers from his eyes, derived from solar energy, but unlike Superman, he can also release this energy from other parts of his body, including his hands and mouth. This dude can fire lasers from his mouth. He uses hyper beam in real life. His only real weakness is that he relies on the sun for his powers, so if he doesn't get enough exposure, his powers will diminish, but hey, at least Apollo isn't vulnerable to kryptonite. Halfway through into number 5, Swamp Thing. In a secret facility located in the Louisiana swamplands, scientist Alec Holland and his wife Linda invented a bio-restorative formula that would solve any nation's food shortage problems. Ferret and Bruno, thugs working for Nathan Ellery, barged into Alec's lab, knocked him out, and planted a bomb in the facility. Alec woke up just as the bomb exploded, and in the flames he ran into the swamp. His body had been drenched in the bio-restorative formula, and this affected the plant life of the swamp, imbuing it with Alec's consciousness and memories. The newly conscious plant life then formed a semblance of a human form and rose up from the bog as the Swamp Thing, the latest in a long line of Earth elementals created when the Green was in need of protection. His body is composed of sentient vegetable matter. He has the ability to nourish himself, superhuman strength, elemental control, chlorokinesis, astral projection, biofission, immortality, regeneration, size alteration, resurrection, you name it, and Swampy can do it. Swampy away! And in 4, Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle was scot-free, the god of escape in the New Gods mythology. A Genesian raised on Apokolips, he defected with his lover Big Barda to Earth, where he used the skills he learned in escapology, both as a performance artist and in the Justice League of America. Originally, the boy scot-free was the son of High Father Isaiah, the ruler of New Genesis. However, as a part of a diplomatic move to stop a destructive war against the planet Apokolips, High Father agreed to an exchange of children with his enemy Darkseid. In doing so, he surrendered scot-free to the care of his enemy while he received his enemy's son Orion. This guy has new god physiology, okay, making him immortal, super strength, super durable, and giving him super agility. Plus, when utilizing his full godly potential, Mr. Miracle wields a cosmic energy field called Alpha Effect, which allows him to transverse through time and space, heal living beings, fully restore creatures back from death, and control energy to an almost boundless degree. Yep, you're on the list. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Jem, son of Saturn. After both his mother and teacher were killed by the White Martians, Jem stole a ship and escaped to Earth, in search of his lover Syra, who had fled there earlier. He arrives in Harlem, New York and is befriended by an orphan named Luther Mankin. After a series of adventures with and without Luther, Jem eventually found Syra. They all then traveled to New Bok, a red Saturnian colony, but because he refused to take sides in a civil war on New Bok, Jem was disavowed and cast out by both factions. Dispirited, Jem and Luther returned to Earth, and given that Jem is a form of Martian in a sense, his Saturnian physiology gives him flight, metamorphosis, physiokinesis, telekinesis, telepathy, energy projection, superhuman durability, superhuman stamina, and superhuman strength that allows him to match Martian Manhunter blow for blow. So I think this is a pretty worthy number 3. Penultimately, in at number 2, Karate Kid. Karate Kid is actually Val Armor, a superhero from the future and also a member of the Legion of Superheroes. He is a master of every form of martial arts to have ever been developed by the 30th century. The extent of his skill was so great that he could severely damage various types of hard material with a single blow, and was briefly able to hold his own against Superboy through the use of what he called super karate. So he already seems pretty legit. Val Armor was the son of Japanese greatest crime lord Kiaru Nozumi, also known as the Black Dragon. When he was born, his mother, an American secret agent known as Valentina Armor, tried to hide him from his father, but she failed to do so and was killed for her affront. Japan's biggest hero, Sensei Toshiaki, and the White Crane, eventually killed the Black Dragon for his crimes and then adopted the infant Val. Val. He raised Val as if he were his own son and trained him in all manner of martial arts. Val became the youngest warrior ever to earn the title of samurai, and he went on to work for his local shogun. However, after trying his best and failing to please his supervisor, he quit and searched the galaxy for new forms of battle to master. That just goes to show you, people, appreciate your employees, otherwise they're gonna quit and go search the galaxy for new forms of martial arts, okay? And finally, in at number 1, Blue Beetle. Jamie Reyes was a relatively normal high school student from El Paso, Texas. His father ran a garage and his mother was a paramedic, and he had a little sister who was a total brat. Jamie hung out with his two best friends, Brenda and Paco, and he acted as like the mediator between the hardworking Brenda and the laid-back Paco. By both Brenda and Paco's accounts, he was a good friend, kind of person who could just let them be themselves and would always make things better. Jamie aimed to help his father out in the garage, but Alberto turned him down, not wanting to see his son grow up too fast. Ted Cord, the second Blue Beetle, had come into possession of the Blue Beetle Scarab, the artifact which had given Dan Garrett, the first Blue Beetle, his powers. The Scarab had been presumed destroyed early in Ted's superhero career, but it was discovered intact in a pyramid in the Middle East. This is where Jamie gets his powers as well. What are those powers, you ask? The Scarab can and will use its powers of its own accord. Jamie, however, can override the Scarab if need be, and should Jeremy fall prey to mind-altering power, the Scarab will take control of the armor. So it will act on its own, and basically he's not mind control anymore because it's just the Scarab doing it, not actually him. So yeah, number 1 hands down.
Coming in at number 10, we have Kamala Khan, aka the latest and greatest Ms. Marvel. Originally just an Avengers fangirl growing up with her parents in Jersey City, Kamala Khan's life was changed forever when the Terrigen Mists incident took place and activated her hidden inhuman powers. Kamala was amazed to discover she was actually a polymorph and was capable of completely altering the size of her body. Inspired by her lifelong hero, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, Kamala Khan became the next generation's Ms. Marvel, using her powers as a member of the Young Avengers and becoming the type of hero she'd always dreamed of becoming. Coming in at number 9, we have the iconic vampire killer known as Blade. Born as a human-vampire hybrid named Eric Brooks, Blade has all of the powers of a Marvel Universe vampire with nearly none of the negative side effects. He possesses superhuman strength and speed, with all of his senses heightened to make him a perfect predator, while being immune to damage from sunlight, silver, or holy artifacts that would instantly turn a regular vampire powerless. While he does still need the nutrients from fresh human blood to prevent himself from losing control of his hunger, Blade often uses a special serum as opposed to actually draining the blood of any humans. With so many strengths and so little weaknesses, Blade is definitely a blood-sucking force to be reckoned with. Coming in at number 8, we have Nina Thurman, aka the anti-hero Domino. Perhaps best known for some iconic moments in the movie Deadpool 2, Domino is a mutant mercenary working for the team known as X-Force. Highly skilled and heavily trained in all manner of weaponry and firepower, the true source of Domino's power is her luck-based mutant ability, aka probability manipulation, essentially giving herself good luck and her opponents in any fight bad luck. And while Domino's powers can't cause impossible acts to happen, improbable actions happen all the time, making her an incredibly lucky fighter that's nearly impossible to outwit or outmaneuver. Coming in at number 7, we have Blackagar Boltagon, aka the mighty Black Bolt. The king of Atalan and leader of the Inhumans associated with their royal family, Black Bolt is best known for being completely unable to talk, as any use of his vocal cords causes an intense reaction in surrounding electrons and makes him one of the most destructive forces on the planet, with even a whisper being able to kill someone and a shout potentially capable of destroying entire planets. On top of this incredibly devastating power at his command, Black Bolt also possesses a more typical superhuman strength and speed as well, meaning even if he's staying silent, he can still kick some supervillain butt. Coming in at number 6, we have Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. After being bombarded with cosmic rays alongside the other members of the Fantastic Four, Johnny Storm found his fiery personality brought out even further with a whole host of flame-based superpowers. Capable of enveloping his entire body in a super hot plasma without harming himself, and launching fire as either an attack or to propel himself through the air as a form of flight, Johnny's true power comes from just how malleable and creative he can get with his powers, always finding a new way to save the day and a new way to flame on. Coming in at number 5, we have the Vision. The son of the evil artificial intelligence known as Ultron, Vision saw that there was good in humanity that his creator just couldn't see, and defied Ultron to help and eventually join the Avengers. While his super strength, capability of flight, and the whole capable of shooting laser beams thing would make him a powerful enough hero on their own, Vision's most unique power is his density manipulation, allowing him to pass through solid objects or give his fist the extra punching power and density of a dwarf star. All of these powers combined make Vision one of the most uniquely powered Avengers, and someone you definitely don't want to mess with. Coming in at number 4, we have Valeria Richards, the daughter of Reed Richards and Sue Storm. Conceived during a Fantastic Four adventure within the Negative Zone, this led to unexpected consequences for both the baby and her mother, with frequent bursts of cosmic radiation endangering everyone nearby until her eventual birth. Although at first glance she appeared to not have any powers, Valeria has a greatly increased intelligence due to the cosmic radiation her parents endured, meaning that she's likely to become even smarter than her father once she's old enough. And in a Marvel universe absolutely filled with geniuses, that just might be enough to be one of the more powerful heroes of the next generation of Marvel. Coming in at number 3, we have the Silver Surfer. Long known as being the herald of the mighty Galactus, just because he has a bigger boss in charge of him doesn't mean that the Silver Surfer isn't plenty powerful on his own. Wielding the power cosmic, the same force that gives Galactus his world-crushing strength, the Silver Surfer has many enhanced strengths and powers compared to a regular human being, and is capable of altering the very energy of the universe and convert matter into energy to sustain himself. The Surfer is also a master of projecting energy blasts, and can use them for both offensive and defensive purposes, continuing to fight as a defender of the cosmos, even if his days as Galactus' herald are long behind him. Coming in at number 2, we have James Logan Howlett, aka the Wolverine. One of the most well-known X-Men of all time, Wolverine is the perfect combination of mutant powers and vicious killing ability. With a healing ability that borders on making Logan completely unkillable, and the indestructible metal adamantium having been grafted onto his skeleton and claws during the Weapon X experiments, Wolverine is one of the most terrifying opponents to face in the entire Marvel universe. And while in recent times he's become a well-respected leader on the island of Krakoa, Wolverine has a long history of amnesia and bloody missions, and will often volunteer to take on the violent jobs that other heroes might just squirm away from. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Professor Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. The creator of the X-Men and the founder of Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, Professor X is obviously known as an extremely talented and powerful telepath. But the true extent of his abilities is beyond what you might even guess. Capable of detecting any mutant in the world with the aid of technology, Xavier's psionic powers are so great that he is constantly holding himself back, and must permanently keep any of his negative emotions in check to prevent disaster. And with villains like Onslaught being the direct result of what happens if Professor X ever goes too far, Charles Xavier might just be a bit too powerful for his own good.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Wasp. Sometimes size matters. I mean, the Incredible Hulk can eat a car and then squish another car and toss it across San Francisco. That's awesome. But sometimes size doesn't necessarily matter. Janet Van Dyne may be small, but just like Ant-Man, she packs a mean punch. She made her first debut back in Tales to Astonish issue 44, and in the early 60s, she became a founding member of the Avengers, after her soon-to-be husband, Hank Pym, genetically altered her and gave her the ability to shrink down using Pym particles. She was also given biosynthetic wings implanted in her back to help her fly around while she fires bioelectric energy stings at bad guys. Donning the nickname the Wasp, she became Ant-Man's partner, and fans are excited that the release date being announced last week, we now get Ant-Man's third movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and it hits theaters February 2022. So in the MCU, Janet is finally an Avenger post-Endgame, and in Avengers issue 1, well, she was already on the roster. Number 9, Black Knight. Dane Whitman made his comic book debut in Avengers issue 48. He inherited his uncle Garrett's castle and had no idea that his uncle was the villain, the Black Knight. He found the Ebony Blade and passed its test, becoming the new Black Knight. He then decided to join the Masters of Evil like his uncle did, but he was going in undercover. He was on the good side, so he wanted to help the Avengers, but they still needed more. They didn't trust him quite enough yet. In Avengers issue 71, funny enough, titled Endgame, Dane joins the Avengers. Well, kind of. Like I said, they didn't trust him so much until he helped fight Kang the Conqueror, and then they were like, okay, he's cool, come on aboard. He's an excellent swordsmith, so much so that he's beaten the swordsmith in combat. And that sword that he uses as well grants him immunity to magical powers. Plus the dude rides a winged horse, an underrated Avenger for sure.
Coming in at number 8, we have the crazed character known as Gwenpool. One of the weirder characters from throughout the Marvel multiverse, Gwendolyn Poole is originally from an alternate reality that just might be our own, before somehow getting sucked into the Marvel 616 universe through a comic book, granting her even more fourth wall breaking powers than even her namesake of Deadpool. With the ability to manipulate all aspects of her comic book world, such as physically interacting with lettering and caption boxes, Gwenpool is capable of literally rewriting reality to get the upper hand on her opponents, making her powers some of the most unusual throughout all of Marvel history, but still counting as some of the most powerful to ever come from a teen hero. Coming in at number 7, we have Vulcan, the secret third brother of Scott and Alex Summers, also known as Gabriel Summers. Born on the Shi'ar throne world following his parents' abduction by the Shi'ar Empire, Gabriel was aged rapidly in an incubation accelerator, and discovered he was an Omega-level mutant far above his brother's power back on Earth, giving him the unique ability to control the elements of water, wind, earth, fire, electricity, light, and darkness, using these incredible powers to take over the Shi'ar Empire and become their new emperor. And while this position of power would occasionally bring him into conflict with the X-Men, he still could generally be counted upon to fight for the side of good with his incredibly impressive power set. Coming in at number 6, we have the upcoming Disney Plus star, Moon Knight. A street-level Marvel hero with powers that go far beyond the usual street, Mark Spector is a vessel for an Egyptian god known as Khonshu. Able to embrace the 4 different aspects of this deity as 4 distinct personalities within his own head, Moon Knight is strongest under the light of a full moon, giving him physical strength far beyond that of a normal man, and a pain tolerance that is nearly limitless. On top of his supernatural abilities, Mark is also an expert in both weaponry and hand-to-hand combat, combining them with his moon-based powers into a deadly combination that makes him one of the ultimate crime fighters and mercenaries in the entire Marvel world. Coming in at number 5, we have Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. One of the original members of the Fantastic Four, Ben Grimm found his entire body converted into an orange rock-like substance after being bombarded with cosmic rays alongside the rest of the Fantastic Four during their initial fated journey into space. Because of this transformation, Ben has become the physically strongest member of the team by far, and appears to be continuing to get stronger with age, capable of lifting 30,000 tons worth of a building to prevent it from collapsing, and even being able to push back entire alien motherships. He might often get overlooked compared to some of the other brawny Marvel heroes like Thor and the Hulk, but the Thing is definitely a strong contender whenever it counts. Coming in at number 4, we have the Sorcerer Supreme, aka Dr. Steven Stephen Strange. Doctor Strange is Earth's primary defender against mystical threats in the Marvel Universe, and always seems to have some sort of spell available to solve whatever problem is currently facing Earth's mightiest heroes. As a master of the mystic arts, Strange has also entirely stopped aging and is effectively immortal, being unable to die from any medical diseases or regular symptoms of old age. And when Strange recently did die in the Marvel comic called The Death of Doctor Strange, he had already concocted a way for a younger version of himself from the timeline to take his place and defend Earth against any extra-dimensional forces that might seek to take advantage of his own death. There's planning ahead, and then there's Dr. Stephen Strange taking it to a whole different level. Coming in at number 3, we have Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. As one of the earlier members of the Uncanny X-Men, Bobby has had a lot of time over the years to explore his powers, and contrary to appearances, he can do far more than just convert his body into ice. Classified as an Omega level mutant, the most powerful kind there is, Iceman is capable of not only controlling the temperature of all of his own molecules, but is able to manipulate water molecules entirely as part of his own mass. This means the possibilities for Bobby's powers are as intense and malleable as water itself, allowing him to freeze the blood within enemies' veins, travel instantly through a stream of water, or even turn himself into a massive snow-covered giant capable of wading his way across the literal ocean. Totally not showing off there, Bobby. Totally not. Coming in at number 2, we have Peter Parker, aka the Spectacular Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man definitely isn't known for being a weakling, but his actual physical strength is actually far beyond what anyone in even the Marvel Universe would expect. Under situations of intense stress, Peter Parker has been shown as capable of lifting literal tons worth of rubble and debris, far beyond the usual strength that he generally seems to show off. And when Peter Parker's body was briefly taken over by Otto Octavius's brain, the villain was stunned to discover that Spider-Man has actually been holding back every punch he's ever thrown, after the villain controlling Peter's body accidentally punched the Scorpion's jaw right off. Maybe it's a good idea to not try and get punched by Spider-Man. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Incredible Hulk, a character who's known for being strong, but might actually be the most underrated when it comes to just how strong he can become. Ever since being bombarded with gamma rays, Bruce Banner's limits for physical strength have been said to be practically non-existent, with all-knowing characters like the Beyonder outright stating that the Hulk has no limits to his physical strength. The only difference between different Hulk forms is their starting strength, with all of them still having the potential to theoretically complete feats such as outpulling a black hole. It's this endless capacity for potential destruction that has made the Hulk such an alluring target to evil forces over the years, but if the Hulk's proven anything, it's that maybe he's not a guy you should try to mind control.
And it's at Midnighter. Midnighter, alongside his future husband Apollo, was part of the top secret Stormwatch team created by the first Weatherman, Henry Bendix. Nobody but Bendix himself knew of the team's existence. Bendix built them as superhumans, and when they donned their costumes and spoke their code names, their previous identities ceased to exist. Midnighter has the power to predict how a situation will happen before it starts. This allows him to run through a given situation millions of times in his mind, instantly covering every possible result before his first move is even made. He uses this information to predict the actions and or reactions of others, counteracting their moves almost before they even think to make them, effectively making Midnighter the greatest tactician in the history of mankind. Basically the good guy version of the Thinker. That's pretty cool. He could be Batman just because he knew every single way it would happen. And at 9, the Atomic Knight. The Atomic Knights appeared in every third issue of Strange Adventures in the early 1960s, beginning with number 117 and running through number 160. In all, there were 15 early 1960s Atomic Knight stories created by writer John Broome and artist Murphy Anderson. They were a band of heroes living in and protecting the post-apocalyptic future of 1992. Yep, at that point it was the future. Following the catastrophic Hydrogen War of 1986, a petty tyrant named the Black Baron ruled a small section of the Midwestern United States with an iron fist. He was opposed by Sergeant Gardner Grail of the Atomic Knights, who wore medieval suits of armor that were impervious to the Baron's energy weapons, the armor having been irradiated in the war. Gardner Grail also has precognition, and wears a suit of armor that grants him enhanced speed, strength, endurance, and lets him blast energy, as well as being adaptable to other technology.
Number 8, Metamorpho. Going along along with the Element Girl and another of the strangest but also most powerful heroes from DC Comics is Metamorpho. Metamorpho made his first appearance back in 1965 in The Brave and the Bold issue number 57 and has also been known as the Element Man in the comics. He has a unique and interesting power set that allows him to transform his body or parts of his body into any element that you can imagine. This also gives him a pretty unique look as well. Metamorpho isn't the only hero to exhibit these powers though. As we previously discussed, there's also Element Girl, and there have been other characters as well who have been turned into Metamorphae, some of them fighting for the forces of good and some of them actually fighting kind of for the forces of evil. Number 7. Daimon Hellstrom. We don't talk about Daimon Hellstrom enough on this channel, so I am happy, very happy to have him featured here on my list of powerful heroes you wouldn't expect. Did you expect him? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, let me know. I asked that question like you were going to answer, but you can't because that's not how this works. Daimon is a mystical hero from Marvel Comics, but he is also somewhat niche in his mysticism, being specifically tied to the demonic side of that area, since he is the son of Satan. Daimon's father may not actually be the devil himself though. Regardless, his dad is certainly, at the very least, an extremely powerful demon who does at least claim to be the one true devil. If that even really exists in Marvel Comics, a lot of demons be claiming that title, to be honest. But to be clear, that doesn't mean Daimon is a bad guy. Daimon has often tried to live his life as more of a hero and initially was like an occult detective in the comics, answering calls and trying to fight against his own dark side, balancing it with good deeds and acts of heroism as he combated against other demons and the evil side of the supernatural. Number 6. Big Barda. Big Barda is a hero from DC Comics that we really don't talk very much about on this channel, and for that reason I felt like many wouldn't expect her here, just because she is so often forgotten amidst other physically powerful female warrior heroes. Barda is a fantastic and immensely powerful character. She was once a member of Darkseid's elite force of warriors known as his Female Furies, but ended up leaving Apocalypse to be with the escaped prisoner from Apocalypse who also became a hero, Mr. Miracle. And thank goodness, because goodness knows how much the heroes of Earth could use her and Mr. Miracle's skills, especially with her being a fierce warrior and an excellent strategist. Big Barda would also go on to become a member of the Justice League, deservedly, and recently joined up with the Birds of Prey team as well. Number 5. Dupe. By far one of the strangest yet kinda in a weird way most OP characters of all time from Marvel has to be Dupe. Definitely one of the most strange, at the very least. And now we have his evil counterpart Pood from the Excellent series. Oh boy. Dupe is pretty powerful because he has some fourth wall shattering levels of awareness, and he is able to actually move between panels in comics, existing not just within the page's panels, but also moving into the borders and margins of that page. He also demonstrated some powerful magical abilities as well as super strength, speed, durability, and even the power to resurrect without the help of the Five, no less. Because Dupe is Dupe and he's kind of a joke character, he also ends up often being one of those characters that gets whatever powers are needed for the story that he's appearing in, which I think makes him crazy powerful. I love joke characters like that because they can kind of do anything. Number 4. Dorothy Spinner. Dorothy Spinner is a member of the Doom Patrol. She's probably one of the most powerful, although volatile, I would say, members of the bunch. In the TV series, she is shown to be the daughter of Niles Calder, aka the Chief, the leader of the team. However, in the comics, Dorothy is not connected to Niles in the same way, but instead was just brought to the Doom Patrol by her parents when they didn't know really where else to turn. Dorothy was born with a deformity, a face that made her look somewhat monkey-like in appearance. As such, she was mistreated by the other kids at school and ended up ultimately creating her own imaginary friends to kind of cope with this. The problem came when her imaginary friends seemed to no longer really be imaginary and instead kind of came to life, becoming their own beings connected to but ultimately independent of her in regards to possessing their own will. Dorothy's powers allow her to warp reality, you see, but the problem is that she struggles to control this power and has actually made bad things happen by accident at times. It's kind of sometimes a subconscious thing, which can be a problem. Number 3. Crazy Jane. Crazy Jane is one of my favorite Doom Patrol members. She's probably the most insanely powerful member on that team, other than obviously Dorothy, but I feel like Jane has at least a little bit more control than Dorothy. Jane possesses multiple different personas within herself that at times surface and take control of her physical form, and each persona has its own motivations and power set as well as its own name. Jane as such has almost limitless power between all these various personas. Jane first appeared in Doom Patrol issue number 19 from the 1987 series, created by comic book writing legend Grant Morrison and the amazing artist Richard Case. Number 2. Adam Eve. Probably one of the most powerful women I can think of in comics, actually hails from one of the more indie side of things. She is Adam Eve, also known as Samantha Wilkins, Samantha Eve Wilkins, although most people just call her Eve. While most people think of Adam Eve as just being the major love interest for Invincible and just another member of the new Guardians of the Globe team, she's actually one of the most powerful characters in terms of her abilities because she can literally manipulate matter. Every time you see Adam Eve in her costume, she actually made that costume herself by rearranging the atoms of her clothes. Yeah, pretty crazy. Adam Eve is not only able to manipulate matter around her in this way, but she is also immortal as a result of her power set. And her power set doesn't just work in terms of like her, moving her fingers around and making kind of magic happen with her powers. It also grants her an advanced understanding of biochemistry as well, which is how she's able to utilize them so well because she actually understands like the elements and everything that she's manipulating, which is pretty cool. Number 1, Dr. Voodoo. Dr. Voodoo is Jericho Drumm, who himself in the Marvel Universe was known as Sorcerer Supreme at one point. A lot of people forget about him because he's often overshadowed by the more well-known Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Stephen Strange, but he himself is also pretty OP. He took over the Sorcerer Supreme title when Doctor Strange was no longer deemed worthy and served as his replacement for a time. Eventually, he and Strange were forced to face the now evil Agamotto together. He was like disappointed all around there, which is why they obviously had to fight him, and also because, he was kind of evil at that time. Dr. Voodoo has also shared the leadership role of Strange Academy with his friend and magical colleague Stephen Strange. Yay. Strange Academy is so good. Still need to read. Number 10, Radiant Red. One of the heavy hitters from the Radiant Black universe is Radiant Red. I love her. She's one of my favorite characters from the Massiverse, which comes to us from Image Comics. Although some may view her as an anti-hero or villain, Satomi isn't a bad person. She simply made mistakes. To me, she's more of an anti-hero, but the term still of course includes the word hero. Initially introduced to us as a bank robber and antagonist in Radiant Black, Satomi's motivations for her actions are explored in a Radiant Red focused issue of the Radiant Black series, and her own self-titled miniseries, Radiant Red. And surprisingly, none of her motivations are revealed to be truly evil or selfish. In fact, you could say they're actually just the opposite. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button. Number 9, Element Girl. Element Girl appears in the Sandman series, but before that she made her debut appearance way back in the 1960s, appearing in Metamorpho issue number 10 over at DC Comics. Urania Blackwell was an agent for the CIA before she ended up becoming a hero. She was sent on a mission to gain powers similar to those of Metamorpho. She would die early on in her career as a vigilante, but shortly thereafter be resurrected. Despite this, Element Girl would also go on to lament just how powerful and indestructible she was later in her life. After her superhero days, she retired and became a recluse. Hating her life, the way she looked, the fact that she was all alone, and the fact that she would never pretty much die, or at least that's how she felt, she happened into a chance meeting with one of the Endless, Death. With Death's help, she was able to end her life by speaking with the Egyptian sun god Ra, whose power had transformed her in the first place into one of his Metamorphae, ancient and powerful beings who were initially his soldiers to be used in the war against Apep the Serpent.
Number 8, Firestar. Angelica Jones made her comic book debut in Uncanny X-Men 193. She was born with, well, as you would guess by her name, the ability to generate great heat. Cerebro found her, but the Hellfire Club got to her moments before. She was learning a lot under the White Queen's guidance, honestly, unaware of the cruel nature of the club, of course. See, Frost actually gave her the nickname Firestar. So then Firestar joined as a reserve member in Avengers Volume 3, Issue 4. Yeah, so Hawkeye demanded that one of the 2 new members that they're recruiting has to be Firestar. He announced it to the world prematurely. He was that confident. The other members are like, whoa, let's hold on a second here because that spot that we had open was actually for you, Hawkeye. But they settled on reserve member. That's fine, that's good enough. Now cut to issue 7, the former X-Men member became a full Avengers member. Firestar was also amongst the lucky 198 mutants to have kept their abilities after the Scarlet Witch decimated the mutant population. Number 7, Wizard. This dude was only an Avenger for 4 years in the comics, but he's funky enough to mention. I feel like we don't talk about Wizard enough. Robert Frank Sr. made his first appearance in USA Comics 1, and after a run-in with a Cobra, he was bitten and his father had to use mongoose blood to try and save him the old-fashioned way, where he sucks the poison out. Some wives' tale, and it surely worked, but his father had a heart attack during this do-it-yourself transfusion and bit the bullet. Robert, on the other hand, was blessed with super speed after this, and then he became the Wizard. Great name, great name. He joined the Avengers in issue 173 back in 1978, but he met his fate and Vision in the Scarlet Witch issue 2 in 1982. Number 6, Demolition Man. Dennis Murphy, born in Detroit, Michigan. He looked up to superheroes quite a bit, as do most of us. He was actually great at football, but he wasn't great enough to be recruited professionally. Sad times. But then that's when the power broker comes in to strike up a bargain. Super strength ought to help you with those home games, right, Dennis? Let's do it. Well, what happened was he got so strong that if he did decide to play football with these humans, he would probably break through them. His name is Demolition Man. Nobody would expect this guy to be an Avenger because he wasn't even the best football player. That's like what Peter Parker says. He's like, I couldn't do stuff then, so I can't do stuff now. You know? He joined the Avengers in Captain America issue 349. He helped Battlestar and US Agent free Captain America, and when US Agent and Flag Smasher started to get a little distracted, D-Man himself finished the mission properly. Number 5, Lightning. Living lightning, here we go. It's hard to imagine that a man made of lightning would ever not get the spotlight, but that's what happens when you share the pages with this team. Lightning, aka Miguel Santos, first came into comics as a villain, actually, but he joined the West Coast Avengers in issue 74. Now, his father, cut to way before, his father was part of this group called the Legion of Living Lightning, or LOL, as some would say. And when they tried to gain control of the Hulk, which is a terrible idea, his father was killed in action. Again, terrible idea, don't fight the Hulk. So Miguel wanted to learn more of his father in the Legion, so he broke into the Legion's headquarters, and while he was snooping around, one of the machines turned on, and he turned into a living energy. Now, he almost joined the Great Lakes Avengers at one point, but only because he thought GLA meant Gay Lesbian Alliance. I don't think Great Lakes are as exciting, but you never know. We have one over here, it's Lake Ontario. It's way too cold and smelly. No. I would much rather Gay Lesbian Alliances. The team had the worst luck when it came to recruits. Let's just say that. Number 4, Stingray. Walter Newell made his comic book debut in Tales to Astonish issue 95. Now his life began as an oceanographer and an engineer, and once he created a suit built for deep sea exploration, a cool nickname was bound to come afterwards. Stingray, there it is, that's a cool nickname. He was ordered to bring in Namor to investigate the disappearance of water from our oceans. He ended up working with Namor numerous times, Water Bros for life. And then he joined the team as a reserve member in the Avengers issue 319. Funny enough, in the Armor Wars storyline, Iron Man wanted to recover all these suits that had Stark tech in it. So he comes in, knocks out Stingray, and then after attaching the Negator pack, nothing happened. So the suit was indeed not stolen. You know, it's always nice when you knock someone out for no reason. I'd love to see him make an appearance in the Armor Wars Disney show, but I think we need a lot of other stuff first before we even look at Stingray. Although he is cool. Number 3, Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart, son of Philip Hart, a brilliant scientist who developed a liquid called Zero Fluid, and his mother was actually part of the Contraxian race. Now, the alien woman was also a scientist sent to discover this energy source to help their dying Contraxian son. Now, the alien lady heard about Philip Hart's experiments, so they met, got married, and then out came Jack. And then later on, when Jack was a teenager, his father had completed the Zero Fluid, but was sadly killed by the agents of a criminal corporation who wanted the fluid for themselves to market it. Classic bad guy stuff. Give us your fluids, let's fight. So when Jack hid in his father's lab, he was covered in said Zero Fluid, and then he started to glow and change and become more powerful, becoming the Jack of Hearts. Energy was just oozing out of his body. He handled his father's killers easily after that. He then joined the Avengers in volume 3, issue 43. Number 2, not one, but 2 guns. He's got 2 guns, the 2-gun kid. Let's talk about him. Of course, we can't forget this rootin' tootin' Avenger. Look out, gang, here he comes. Matt Hawk joined the team in Avengers 142. This guy's fun. Now, the cover alone, let's talk about this. The Avengers versus the wild Western heroes of all. Let's go. I'm gonna read this right now. He was a Harvard-educated Boston lawyer who settled in 1870s Tombstone, Texas, after the Civil War. Like the Civil War, not Civil War, like the Civil War. You get it? I don't really have to pitch what his life was pre-Avengers. I mean, there's horses, there's shooting, there's lots of nice boots. One day he saved the life of this elderly man. He was getting picked on by a rootin' tootin' gang. But this man just happened to be legendary gunslinger Ben Dancer. It's Ben Dancer. So Ben is exactly what you'd imagine in your head. I read all of his lines in Sam Elliott's voice because, well, of course I did. Look at him. So he, of course, trained Matt, and then when the Avengers fought Kang back in that era, so once the dust had settled, literally, the dust had settled, the 2-gun kid came back to the modern era with the team. And Hawkeye had a pretty good time as well. This is when he started to dig the West Coast life. He wanted to leave the Avengers because being a bow and arrow man made more sense to be out there than Manhattan. I have to agree. And finally, number 1, we can't forget about him, the Forgotten One. Gilgamesh made his first appearance in Eternals issue 13. He was born before the Ice Age, and in 3000 BC, the Eternal became Gilgamesh, king of Uruk in Sumeria. In ancient times, he would wander the earth battling tyrants and taking down beasts. He would fight alongside Hercules, and he even took down the demon dragon Zoo. He fought for the Roman Empire as a centurion, just taking out tribes left and right, and then he joined the Avengers in issue 300. And currently, he works alongside Hercules and the gods of war. Now, I feel like we're gonna see this guy soon in the MCU. I mean, the Eternals movie, Thor, Love and Thunder, bringing in some gods. The Forgotten One, no more, I have a feeling.